Miles. That was all I could think as I ran down the shoulder of the road. My hands pressed against her shoulders, my arms curled under her knees and back. Blood was soaking through my sleeve before I even realized it. The headlights of cars flashed past, fast, indifferent, illuminating her twisted form in half-second bursts. The nose of the car was crushed into the ditch like it had been slammed there by some cruel hand. She was lying on the asphalt, trying not to scream, trying not to move, trying to survive each second. And with every breath she took, she was getting lighter. I knew then, waiting would kill her. The road stretched ahead, dark and empty, 2 lanes, no lights, forest pressing in on both sides. The kind of highway people trusted because it looked simple, the kind where accidents happened quietly and stayed that way. Before we continue, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read everyone. I had been walking the shoulder for hours, counting steps, keeping my head down, staying small, staying invisible. Night didn't call anyone. Night didn't ask questions. Night let you exist without paperwork, without attention. The crash came out of nowhere, a shriek of metal, a hard final sound. Then silence so sudden it rang in my ears. I froze, heart hammering, watching the car spin and slide down the embankment. Steam rose from the wreck. I heard her first, soft, broken, whimpering, worse than screaming. I slid down the embankment, boots skidding, hands reaching out to steady myself. The car was a wreck, the windshield gone, the driver's side crushed inward. The smell of gasoline was sharp in the cold night air. She was there, half on the asphalt, half in the grass. One leg bent wrong, arms tight against her chest, eyes wide, locking onto mine the second I got close. "Don't move," I said, voice low and steady. I didn't even know if she could hear me. She might already be past the point where she could. Blood at her temple, shallow breaths, trembling hands clutching my jacket. "Please," she whispered. "It hurts." "I know," I said, my voice low, steady. "I know." I looked down the road. Nothing. No cars slowing, no brake lights, just empty darkness. The world had decided this wasn't its problem tonight. I opened my hoodie, pressed it gently against her head, trying to slow the bleeding. My hands shook, but I forced them steady. "Phone?" I asked. She shook her head. "No signal." I waved at the next car. Horn blared, wind nearly knocking me over. It sped past. Another car followed, same thing. No one stopped. Her breathing hitched, small, broken, shock setting in. If I stayed, she would die on this forgotten road. I looked at her again. Clean clothes, new sneakers, backpack thrown clear. She didn't belong here, neither did I, but only one of us could move. "All right," I said quietly, more to myself than to her. "I've got you." Her fingers tightened in my hoodie as I slid one arm behind her shoulders, the other under her knees. Her teeth clenched, breath catching. I started walking. Every step sent pain through my spine. My legs were numb, my back screamed, my arms quivered with effort. "Stay with me," I said evenly. She nodded weakly against me. "You won't leave?" "No," I said immediately. We passed mile markers. My arms shook violently. Muscles screamed for rest I couldn't give. Blood and gasoline stung my nose. The cold bit through my hoodie. A car approached. I waved frantically. The headlights slowed. A driver stared at us, eyes wide. Then it sped past. "Why won't they help?" she whispered. I didn't answer. There was no answer that wouldn't hurt. Another mile, another step. The world narrowed to her breathing against my chest, to my rhythm, to survival. Then, faint lights appeared ahead. Gas station? Rest stop? Hope flickered. Knees nearly buckled, but I pushed harder. She stirred. "You didn't drop me." "No," I said hoarsely. "I told you." The wreck behind us disappeared into the dark, steam rising like a ghost. Ahead, light, warmth, maybe safety. The glow ahead grew slowly, faint at first, trembling like it wasn't sure it wanted to exist. Every step burned through my arms, my back, my legs, but I couldn't stop. Not now. Not when she was still clinging to life. Her breath was uneven, shallow gasps pressed against my chest, each one a fragile thread holding her to the world. I murmured her name, though I wasn't sure she could hear me over the pounding of my own heart. Almost there, I whispered. My voice sounded hollow to me. Just a little further. The air smelled sharp. Blood, gasoline, the cold night cutting into every exposed inch of skin. But the thought of her fading kept me moving. Every step was agony, but I forced my legs forward. Mile markers blurred past, yellow lines underfoot fading into the black asphalt. A faint hum of activity arose ahead. Lights flickered through the night. A gas station, maybe an open diner. Salvation! I waved frantically, shouting, hoping someone, anyone would see. Finally, a car slowed, headlights fixed on us, illuminating the blood-streaked hoodie, the small, trembling body in my arms. A man jumped out, flashlight in hand, eyes wide as they scanned the scene. "Call an ambulance," I barked, voice cracking from exhaustion. My arms ached, spine screaming, lungs on fire. She whimpered again but didn't resist. Her fingers clung weakly to my jacket. The man nodded, fumbled for his phone. Another couple of drivers slowed momentarily but sped off without stopping. I didn't notice. Nothing mattered except the girl in my arms. I lowered her gently onto the pavement as carefully as I could, adjusting her position to ease the sharp bend in her leg. She whimpered, but her breathing was steadier now. The ambulance sirens were faint at first, then growing louder, slicing through the night. I stepped back, chest heaving, hands trembling. I could finally let her go into someone else's care. She looked at me for a moment, eyes wide, scared, but something in that glance told me she trusted me. She was still alive. That was all that mattered. The paramedics worked quickly, blankets wrapped, vitals checked, hands gentle. She gave me a weak smile, and I nodded. "Stay with me," I said one last time, though it was no longer necessary. As they loaded her into the ambulance, I glanced back at the wreck, rising steam curling into the dark. The night swallowed it again, indifferent. But this time, I had changed something. One life had survived. One life still had a chance. I whispered into the cold wind, letting the words carry across the empty highway. "You're not forgotten. Someone sees you." The ambulance lights disappeared into the night, leaving me alone on the shoulder. The wind cut through my soaked hoodie, carrying the faint smell of smoke and gasoline. I sank to the gravel, trying to catch my breath, my hands still shaking from the weight I'd carried. Her small figure, limp but alive, lingered in my mind. I kept replaying every detail, the pale streak of blood on her temple, the way her fingers had clenched my jacket, the way she had looked at me like I was the only thing keeping her from slipping away. I didn't even know her name. I didn't even know why fate had thrown her here. But something told me she wasn't just a random girl. Hours passed. I didn't move. I didn't sleep. The forest around me seemed to lean closer, listening. My legs ached, my arms throbbed, but my mind wouldn't let me rest. I kept thinking about how fragile life was, how one wrong second could end everything, how easily the world ignored the desperate. Then a memory hit me. Her backpack, clean, brand new, sneakers too bright for someone stranded in the dark. She didn't belong here, not really. There was something beneath the surface, something hidden. I couldn't shake the feeling that this night wasn't over, that it had more to reveal. I closed my eyes briefly, listening to the distant siren fading into the trees. I had saved her body, but there was something about her spirit I hadn't touched yet, something about who she was, where she came from. I swore quietly to myself under the chill of the night. I'd find out. I'd make sure she was safe beyond the ambulance, beyond the dark highway. And then I heard it, faint, almost a whisper carried by the wind. Her voice, the same fragile sound from before. "Thank you." I shivered, not from cold, but from the weight of what had just happened. That word, so small, so simple, held more power than the roar of any engine or the darkness of any forest. Somewhere deep inside, I realized this night had changed me too. Life had handed me a choice. I could walk away, leave her to the world's indifference, or I could step further into her story. And I knew, without thinking, which path I had to take. The highway was empty again, silent, but I wasn't alone in it anymore. Something had begun between us, something that wouldn't let me go. The next morning, I couldn't shake the memory of her face, even after the paramedics drove away. I kept thinking about the bruises forming beneath the blood, the way she had flinched at every sound, the tension in her small body that hadn't relaxed even once. She wasn't just hurt, she was scared. I walked back to where the wreck sat abandoned, twisted metal gleaming faintly under the rising sun. Steam had faded, leaving only the sharp smell of burnt rubber and gasoline. My hands grazed the car's crumpled frame. How had a girl this young ended up in something this violent? Something didn't add up. I needed answers. I needed to know who she was, why she was out here alone, and why no one had stopped for her. But even as the questions spun in my mind, a stronger urge gnawed at me. I had to make sure she survived what came next. The ambulance could save her body. I had to protect her from everything else, the threats she hadn't even told anyone about. Hours later, I found myself at the hospital, pacing outside the emergency room. Nurses and doctors moved past, speaking in clipped tones, urgency in their eyes, but no one seemed to notice me. I had no right to be here. I wasn't family. I was just someone who couldn't leave her to the world. Then, through the double doors, I saw her briefly, hair tangled, face pale, eyes closed. A monitor beeped steadily, a lifeline keeping her tethered to the present. I pressed my hands together, wishing I could whisper, "You're safe now. You're not alone." Her breathing shifted slightly, small fingers twitching. I didn't know if she could hear me, or if she even knew I existed outside the chaos of that night. But I promised silently, under the harsh fluorescent lights and the sterile smell of antiseptic, I wouldn't let anyone hurt her again. I wouldn't let her be invisible. Outside, the forest whispered against the wind. Somewhere, a car engine roared. Somewhere, the world continued, oblivious. But inside me, the night had left its mark. I had seen too much, carried too much, and I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. By the time I got to her room, the fluorescent lights felt harsh, almost cruel against her pale skin. She lay on the hospital bed, bandages around her temple, arm in a sling. But it wasn't the injuries that caught my attention. It was the way her eyes darted every time someone passed by, always alert, always afraid. I pulled a chair close and sat down, careful not to startle her. She didn't speak, her lips pressed together, hands curled beneath the blanket. I knew enough not to push too hard. Trust had to be earned, not demanded. "Hey," I said softly, keeping my voice low. "I'm the guy who found you last night. You're safe now. That's all that matters." Her eyes flicked to mine, wary, and then back to the ceiling. A small nod. That was all I needed. Progress. Hours passed in silence. Doctors and nurses moved in and out, checking vitals, adjusting monitors, asking questions she couldn't answer. I stayed, watching, waiting. Every creak of the hospital floor, every distant shout made her flinch slightly. The world outside had already shown her its worst. I wasn't about to add to it. When night fell, I left only for a few minutes, grabbing coffee and some food, but I couldn't stay away long. I returned to find her asleep, breathing shallow but steady. I pulled up a chair, sat beside her bed, and watched over her, like someone had done for me once, like a guardian. Something about her was different. She wasn't just a victim of the crash. There was a story behind those eyes, a danger I could feel even in the quiet hospital room. She wasn't meant to be out here, alone, and I had a sinking feeling that the world that had let her fall once wouldn't hesitate to try again. I clenched my fists. Whatever came next, I wouldn't let her face it alone. She was alive now. That was all that mattered tonight. Tomorrow, maybe, I would start figuring out who she really was and why the universe had put her in my arms. The next morning, I couldn't leave. Not yet. Something about her presence, quiet and fragile, demanded attention. Nurses moved around, giving instructions, but I stayed close, keeping my eyes on her, my hands ready if she stirred. She woke slowly, eyelids heavy, but when she saw me, her gaze sharpened for just a second. Fear mixed with recognition, though she couldn't place me. I gave a small nod. "It's okay, you're safe. That's all that matters right now." Her fingers twitched beneath the blanket, pulling at the sheets, restless. She tried to speak, but only managed to whisper, "Why?" I shook my head. "Don't try yet. Rest." I glanced at the bag she had with her, just a small backpack, nothing fancy, no ID, no clue who she really was. But the way she carried herself, tense and alert, told me she knew danger, maybe even expected it. I realized then that the crash wasn't random. The way she moved, how she reacted to every sound, every passing shadow, it screamed of someone used to being hunted, someone who had survived more than a simple accident. I leaned back in the chair, keeping my voice soft. "We'll figure it out, step by step. No rush. You're not alone anymore." Her eyes stayed on me a moment longer. Not full trust, not yet, but recognition. The flicker that said she understood I wasn't part of the threat. That was enough for now. The day stretched ahead, sterile walls and quiet monitors filling the silence. But even in the monotony, I felt the weight of what had just happened, and the burden of what was coming. Whoever she was, wherever she had come from, the world hadn't let her rest. And now, somehow, she was in my hands. I clenched my fists quietly. Whoever tried to hurt her again would have to go through me first. By mid-afternoon, the sterile hum of the hospital began to feel suffocating. I stayed near her bed, eyes scanning the hall, instincts on high alert. Something about her aura, fragile yet tense, made me uneasy. She wasn't just injured from the crash. There was something she was running from, something that hadn't left her, even in the safety of these walls. A nurse peeked in, clipboard in hand. "Family?" she asked. I shook my head. "No one, just someone who found her last night." The nurse frowned, concern flickering. "She's stable, but you should step away. She needs rest." I nodded outwardly, but didn't move. My gut refused. She stirred slightly, wincing, and I leaned closer. "Don't move too much. You're safe." Her eyes flicked toward the door, sharp, scanning. Not panic, not exactly, but awareness, like she expected someone to appear at any second. My stomach tightened. Whoever she was, the crash wasn't an accident. It couldn't be. Her cautious movements, the way she flinched at every sound, even a shadow, said she had survived situations far worse than an ordinary car accident. I clenched my fists silently. I didn't know what she had been through, but I knew one thing. She wasn't going anywhere alone. I wasn't leaving. Not tonight, not tomorrow. Whoever tried to hurt her before, whoever she feared, would have to go through me first. And even in the quiet, I could feel it, the pull of something bigger, something dangerous. Her story wasn't over. It had only just begun. The world had narrowed to the two of us, her and me, on the edge of that dark, indifferent road. Every scream in my head was drowned out by the pounding of my heart. I could feel her trembling, small body pressed against mine, her breath shallow and ragged. Blood was warm against my skin, sticky, and it smelled metallic, sharp. My hands shook as I tried to hold her still, to stop the bleeding, to stop the world from spinning into chaos. The sound of tires on asphalt made me jump every time a car passed, headlights cutting through the night in violent stabs. Nobody slowed. Nobody cared. My mind screamed, "Help her! Someone stop!" But the night swallowed it all. My arms were aching, my legs threatening to buckle, yet I wouldn't let her fall again. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Relief and fear collided in my chest. Would it arrive in time? Could it reach us before it was too late? I whispered her name over and over, as if saying it would stitch her broken body back together. Miles, stay with me, please. I finally saw movement, figures approaching from the glow of flashing lights. The police? Maybe paramedics? My voice cracked as I waved frantically, my other hand still pressed against the wound, trying to hold back the river of red. Over here! Hurry! But even as help came closer, part of me felt panic clawing at my mind. Every second felt like an eternity, like the world itself had frozen around her. I couldn't stop thinking about the truck, the impact, the chaos, how a single careless moment could destroy everything. My chest tightened, tears blurring my vision, but I gritted my teeth. I had to be strong. I had to be the one keeping her alive until someone else could take over. When the paramedics finally reached us, lifting her gently from my arms, I felt a numb emptiness. Relief fought with terror. They carried her toward the ambulance, and I followed, shouting over the sirens, "She's still breathing! Don't let her stop! Please!" My voice was hoarse, my body trembling, but I stayed right there, refusing to let go. And in that moment, I realized something terrifyingly simple. Sometimes the world doesn't wait for you to be ready. Sometimes it just pushes, shoves, and drags you into the chaos, and all you can do is hold on to what you love with every ounce of yourself, even if it's the last thing you ever do. The ambulance's back doors slammed shut behind us, enclosing us in a harsh, sterile world of bright lights and cold metal. The air was thick with antiseptic and the faint metallic smell of blood. I sat beside her, clutching her hand, trying not to look at the monitors, at the tubes, at the mess of her hair plastered to her bloodied face. My fingers trembled as I pressed against hers, hoping my touch could somehow transfer strength, that somehow I could stitch her broken body with nothing but sheer will. The paramedics barked instructions to their partner, their voices clipped and precise, but I couldn't focus. Every second dragged as I counted her breaths, shallow, uneven. I could hear the faint crackle of the heart monitor, each beep like a hammer against my chest. "Stay with me, Miles. Just stay with me," I whispered, my lips barely moving. Her eyelids fluttered, and I felt a surge of hope. My heart jumped. She blinked once, then again. "Hey, hey, it's me," I said softly, trying not to let my voice shake. "You're going to be okay." "I'm right here. I won't leave you." Her fingers twitched weakly around mine, a small sign, but it was enough. It was everything. Minutes stretched into an eternity as the ambulance raced through the night. Every red light, every honk, every turn of the wheel felt like it could be the last moment I had with her. I found myself replaying the crash in my head, the twisted metal, the screech of tires, the way her body had gone limp, and the guilt clawed at me. Was there something I could have done differently? Could I have saved her sooner? The paramedic glanced at me, his eyes hard but understanding. "She's stable for now. We've got her breathing, circulation holding. We'll get her to the trauma unit. They're ready." Relief flooded through me, but it was tangled with fear. Stable didn't mean safe. Stable didn't mean she'd survive the night. As the ambulance barreled toward the hospital, I held her hand tighter, as if my grip alone could anchor her to life. Outside, the city blurred past, indifferent, fast, unaware of the battle unfolding inside the small, moving box of flashing lights. And I realized, with a hollow certainty, that nothing, no warning, no plan, no luck, had prepared me for this. for the helplessness, for the fear, for the raw, bleeding humanity of watching someone you love fight for their life while all you could do was beg the universe to give them another chance. The ambulance doors opened with a metallic clang, and the hospital lights assaulted my senses, bright, clinical, unforgiving. Nurses and doctors swarmed around us, voices overlapping, orders sharp and fast. I felt my chest tighten as they lifted her onto a stretcher, her small body limp and pale. The monitor beeped steadily, but each sound was a razor in my skull. "Where's the patient coming from?" a doctor barked. "Roadside accident, possible internal bleeding. She's stable but unstable," the paramedic replied, his hands flying over the equipment. I followed closely, clutching her hand until a nurse gently pried mine away. My voice caught in my throat. "Please, she's all I have. Don't let anything happen to her." My words fell into the whirlwind of movement and sounds, unheard, swallowed by the urgency of the ER. They wheeled her into trauma, and I was forced to wait outside, pacing in a narrow hallway that felt suffocating. The antiseptic smell clung to my clothes, and every muffled beep and shout from behind those doors made my stomach drop. I felt helpless, useless, an observer to a nightmare I couldn't control. Time slowed, distorted. Minutes became hours. Each nurse who emerged, each doctor who passed by made my heart leap and sink simultaneously. And then, finally, a man in scrubs approached me. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried weight. "She's stable for now. We've managed the bleeding, but she's had significant trauma. She needs to be monitored closely, and the next 24 hours are critical." Relief hit me like a tidal wave, but it was mixed with exhaustion, fear, and lingering terror. I sank onto a nearby chair, burying my face in my hands. The thought that I almost lost her, the way her body had been tossed and broken, refused to leave me. Then, through the blur of fear, a small hand tapped my knee. I looked up, and there she was, her eyes weak, barely open, but fixed on me. A faint, shaky smile curved her lips. "You didn't leave," she whispered, her voice hoarse. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing out a shaky laugh through tears. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time that night, a fragile sense of hope settled over me. She had survived, and somehow, against all odds, we were still together. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Survival was one thing, but what came next, in a world so indifferent and brutal, was another battle entirely. The night faded into a dim, restless morning, but sleep refused me. I sat in the hard plastic chair beside her hospital bed, eyes fixed on her pale, bandaged form. Every shallow breath she took made my chest tighten. Machines hummed, monitors beeped, and the sterile scent of antiseptic hung in the air like a constant reminder of what had almost been lost. Her eyes opened slowly, scanning the room, and they landed on me. A faint, tired smile curved her lips, and for a moment, the chaos of the night disappeared. I remember the truck," she whispered, her voice trembling. Fear and guilt flashed across her face. I reached for her hand, holding it gently, trying to convey strength I didn't entirely feel. "It's over now. You're safe. I'm here. You're not alone," I murmured, though the words felt hollow against the weight of what we had both endured. Hours passed with the slow rhythm of hospital life. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, administering medication, and offering brief reassurances. But the emotional toll pressed down harder than anything physical. I couldn't shake the image of the twisted metal, the flash of headlights, or the blood that had coated her arm. Every memory felt raw, alive, and I realized that surviving the accident didn't erase the trauma. She tried to sit up once, wincing as pain shot through her side. I quickly steadied her, my hands gentle but firm. "Don't push yourself yet.
"You need rest," I warned, my voice low. She nodded, eyes glistening with unshed tears. In that quiet, strained moment, I noticed something else. Her fingers unconsciously reaching for mine, not for support, but for reassurance. It was as if we had both understood, without words, that the night had changed everything. We had survived, yes, but it left us raw, exposed, and fragile in ways that no apology or comfort could immediately heal. The doctor came by later, updating me on her condition. She was stable, recovering, but the road ahead would be long. Broken bones, bruises, emotional scars. The accident had left its mark, not just physically, but deep in the psyche. And as I watched her close her eyes for a brief nap, I silently promised myself that I wouldn't let the world's chaos hurt her again, not if I could prevent it.
The days that followed were a strange mix of relief and tension. She was recovering physically, but the quiet moments revealed the emotional cracks left by the accident. Every time she flinched at a sudden sound, every time her eyes darted nervously to the window, I felt a pang of guilt, like I hadn't protected her enough. I spent most of my time by her side, watching her struggle with simple movements, helping her sit up, guiding her down the hall, holding her steady when her legs wobbled. Each smile she forced, each word she whispered, felt like a victory, but also a reminder of how fragile everything had become. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the hospital blinds, she whispered something that froze me. "Why did it happen? Who did this?" Her voice was barely audible, fear threading through every syllable. I hesitated, realizing I didn't have an answer. I could say it was an accident, but my gut twisted in a knot. Something about that night felt off. Too many coincidences, too much chaos concentrated in one moment. The thought gnawed at me relentlessly. The truck, the way it had swerved, the timing of everything, it wasn't just bad luck. It had felt deliberate, as though someone had wanted her hurt, wanted us to panic. My chest tightened with anger and fear. I clenched my fists, feeling helpless rage simmer beneath the surface. She reached for my hand, her grip weak but insistent. "I don't want to be scared anymore," she whispered, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. I swallowed, forcing out a calmness I didn't feel. "You won't be. I'll protect you, I promise," I said, even as uncertainty gnawed at me from the inside. But deep down, I knew that promise would be tested sooner than I expected. That night, as I left the hospital briefly to clear my head, my phone buzzed. A single message flashed on the screen. "Accidents aren't always accidents. Watch your back." My blood ran cold. The accident wasn't over. Whoever had orchestrated it was still out there, and now they were making it clear that we were next. The message on my phone burned in my mind long after I had read it. My hands shook as I locked the screen, every instinct screaming that we weren't safe. I wanted to rush back to the hospital, to her side, but I knew I couldn't leave her alone for even a moment. Not now. When I returned, she was asleep, her breathing steady but fragile. I watched her for a long time, the weight of the warning pressing down like a heavy stone. Whoever had sent that message knew about the accident, knew we had survived, and the thought that someone wanted her harmed deliberately twisted my stomach into knots. I paced the room, mind racing through possibilities, trying to figure out who could have done this. Friends? Enemies? Strangers? None of it made sense, yet the threat was real. The hospital, a place that should have felt safe, suddenly seemed vulnerable. Every shadow in the hallway felt menacing. Every unfamiliar face in the waiting room sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. By evening, she woke, rubbing her eyes, and I forced a smile. "Hey, you're awake," I said, voice steady despite the storm inside me. She looked at me with a questioning gaze, sensing the tension I couldn't hide. Did something happen? She asked softly, her voice fragile but wary. I shook my head quickly. Nothing, just tired, that's all. You need rest. I wanted to protect her from the truth, for now. She nodded slowly, trusting me, and I realized how heavy that responsibility had become. Protecting her wasn't just about her injuries, it was about keeping her safe from a danger I didn't yet fully understand. Later that night, I sat by the window, phone in hand, replaying the events over and over. The crash, the blood, the ambulance, and now the message. It all connected, but the pattern was still invisible. Whoever had orchestrated this wanted fear, wanted control, and I promised myself, silently and fiercely, that I wouldn't give them either, not ever. But deep down, a cold dread settled in. Surviving the accident had been only the beginning. The real danger, the part that could destroy everything we had fought for, was just starting. The next morning, the hospital felt eerily quiet, almost too quiet. I stayed close to her as she slowly regained strength, but the warning from the previous night lingered like a shadow over everything. Every nurse, every visitor, every sound down the corridor felt like it could signal danger. I had barely taken a breath when a nurse approached with a clipboard. "There's someone here to see you," she said, glancing at me nervously. My heart skipped. "Who?" I asked sharply. "He didn't give a name, just said it's urgent," she replied. I rose instantly, moving toward the visitor area with a tense awareness of every step. There, standing awkwardly in the hallway, was a man in his late 30s, sharply dressed, but with an odd, calculating gleam in his eyes. He looked at me, not her, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. There was something familiar, yet chillingly wrong. "You don't know me," he said calmly, almost too calm. "But I know you, and I know what happened last night." I clenched my fists, my pulse racing. "Who sent you? What do you want?" He smiled faintly, unsettlingly. "I'm just here to warn you. That accident, it wasn't random, and it won't be the last." Fear coiled tightly in my stomach, but I forced myself to stay composed. "What are you talking about? Who's after her?" He shook his head slowly, as if disappointed. "You'll find out soon enough. Just be careful. People you trust may not be who they seem." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving me staring after him, my mind a whirlwind of questions, anger, and dread. I rushed back to her side, heart pounding. "You have to stay alert," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, though my chest burned with panic. "Something's happening. Someone is targeting us." Her eyes widened, fear replacing the tiredness from recovery. "What do you mean?" I didn't answer, because even as I tried to process the visitor, another realization hit me. A chilling truth. The accident had been only the opening move, and now whatever force had set it in motion was watching, waiting, and planning the next strike, and I had no idea where it would hit next. The rest of the day passed in a tense blur. I stayed glued to her side, eyes scanning every doorway, every corner of the hospital, but nothing seemed out of place. Yet the unease refused to leave me. That man's warning echoed in my mind. People you trust may not be who they seem. By evening, I decided I couldn't wait for danger to come to us. I needed answers. I pulled out my phone and began going through recent calls, messages, and anything unusual over the last few weeks. Every detail, no matter how small, was a potential clue. That's when I noticed it. A missed call from a number I didn't recognize, late at night, the same night as the accident. Hesitation clawed at me, but curiosity won. I called it back. A cold, distorted voice answered. "I know what you're looking for. You think you're safe. You're already in too deep." My pulse jumped. "Who is this? What do you want?"
"You'll see soon enough," the voice said, then hung up. The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone, a sinking feeling in my gut. Someone was orchestrating this from the shadows, watching every move, playing a game I hadn't even known existed. I turned to her, lying in the bed, fragile and unaware of the danger closing in. My chest tightened. I had to protect her, but I had no idea how to fight an enemy I couldn't see. My mind raced through options: security, calling the police, tracking that number, but every second wasted felt like a step closer to disaster.
Later that night, a sudden knock on the hospital door made me jump. My heart pounded as I moved closer, tense and ready. A shadow fell across the doorway, and a familiar voice whispered my name. I froze. It was someone I thought I could trust, but the fear in my chest screamed otherwise. My body tensed as I stared at the figure in the doorway. The dim light from the hallway didn't fully illuminate their face, but the familiar silhouette was unmistakable. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the image with the warning I had received. Could it really be? "Why are you here?" I demanded, my voice low but firm. Every instinct screamed that this person was dangerous. They stepped closer, the soft click of their shoes echoing in the quiet hospital corridor. Finally, the light hit their face, and my heart sank. It was someone I had trusted, someone I had never imagined could betray me. Their eyes were cold, calculating, but there was a flicker of something else. Amusement, maybe, at my shock. "You shouldn't have dug too deep," they said quietly, almost mockingly. "Some things are better left alone." I took a step back, my pulse racing. "What do you mean? Who sent the truck? Why are you doing this?" They smirked, a chill running down my spine. "You think this is about the truck? The truck was just a warning, a test. If you can't even protect her from that, what makes you think you can protect her from what's coming next?" The words hit like a physical blow. I realized, with a sickening clarity, that this wasn't random. This wasn't just chaos. Everything, the accident, the message, the late-night calls, had been orchestrated, step, by someone I had trusted implicitly. "You're playing a dangerous game," I spat, trying to mask my fear with anger. They laughed softly, cold and hollow. "I'm not playing. I'm winning. And if you want to survive, you'll learn quickly. Trust no one." Before I could react, they turned and disappeared down the corridor, leaving me staring after them, my mind spinning with questions and dread. The betrayal was sharp, raw, and unforgettable. Someone I had counted on was now part of the threat, and the realization left me feeling more vulnerable than ever. I turned to her, lying peacefully unawares, and felt a surge of protective rage. Whoever this was, whoever had sent the truck, whoever was manipulating events, they hadn't won yet. I would fight. I would protect her, no matter the cost. The next morning, the hospital felt tense, almost suffocating. I stayed glued to her side, watching her sleep, every rise and fall of her chest a fragile reminder of how close we had come to losing everything. But the memory of the figure in the doorway, the betrayal, the cold laughter, kept my nerves taut. I couldn't wait any longer. I had to know who was behind this, and I had to protect her before the next move. Quietly, I slipped out of the room, keeping an eye on the corridors. Each step felt heavier than the last, my mind replaying every interaction, every subtle clue from the past days. Then I saw him again, this time waiting outside the hospital exit, leaning casually against the wall. My blood ran cold. He wasn't supposed to be here. My instincts screamed danger, and yet part of me needed answers. I approached cautiously, keeping my hand near my pocket, near the only thing I had to defend myself. "We need to talk," he said smoothly, almost too calmly. I stopped, heart hammering. "About what? About everything you've done? About nearly killing her?" My voice shook, a mix of fear and rage.
He shook his head slowly, smiling faintly. No, you still don't understand. It's bigger than you, bigger than her. You're in over your head. Then tell me now or I swear. Before I could finish, he stepped closer, and something in his expression shifted. There was a glint in his eyes, a challenge, a dare. You want answers? Fine, but remember this. Every truth has a cost, and the closer you get, the more danger she's in. A chill ran through me. I realized then that uncovering the truth wasn't just about knowledge, it was about survival. And the moment I decided to dig deeper, I had also signed a silent agreement to fight whatever was coming next, no matter how deadly it might be. As he turned and walked away, I felt a surge of determination. Whoever he was, whoever was behind this, they underestimated me. I wasn't just going to survive, I was going to protect her, and I was going to make sure they paid for every ounce of fear they had forced into our lives. By evening, the hospital had emptied slightly, the bustling chaos giving way to a quieter, almost deceptive calm. I sat beside her bed, watching her finally rest after days of trauma. Her breathing was steady, her hand warm in mine, and for a fleeting moment, it almost felt like we could breathe too. But that calm was broken in an instant. A loud crash echoed from the corridor outside, followed by hurried footsteps and panicked voices. My head snapped toward the sound, heart hammering. Nurses and patients' families were rushing toward the source, but instinct pushed me forward. I had to know, had to see.
Peering around the corner, I saw a shadowy figure darting down the hallway, moving with terrifying speed. My stomach dropped. It was him, the one who had orchestrated everything. And he wasn't alone. Behind him, two more figures emerged, masked, moving aggressively. My mind raced, calculating, planning. I had no weapon, no backup, just sheer desperation. I ran back to her side, gripping her hand tightly. "Stay down, stay quiet," I whispered, my voice taut with urgency. "Don't move." The attackers stormed into the room just moments later. One lunged toward the bed, reaching for her. I shoved him back, my hands finding a strength I didn't know I had. A struggle erupted, chaotic and terrifying, the sound of shouts and crashes filling the room. Through the chaos, he appeared, the man I had trusted, standing just beyond the bed, calm and precise. His eyes locked on mine, and I understood in that instant. This was more than a threat. It was a message. He wanted to prove he could strike whenever, wherever. I fought with everything in me, every ounce of adrenaline and fear, shielding her as best I could. The struggle was intense, and the danger felt impossibly close. But even as my strength wavered, a thought anchored me. I would not let her be taken, not by him, not by anyone. And then, in a moment that felt both sudden and inevitable, the first real turning point happened. A sound, a movement, a small mistake by one of the attackers, and the tide of the struggle began to shift. I sank to the floor, clutching her hand, my chest heaving. The attackers were gone, the chaos fading, and for the first time since the accident, a fragile calm returned. She looked at me, eyes wide with fear and gratitude, and whispered, "You saved me." I nodded, but my mind was already racing. This wasn't luck, and it wasn't chance. It was karma. The man who had orchestrated everything, who had tried to terrorize us, had underestimated me. He had shown his cruelty, his arrogance, and now he was exposed. Every threat he had sent, every attempt to control us, had only fueled my resolve. Days later, the authorities caught him, traced his messages, and uncovered his web of deceit. He faced the consequences of every act, every manipulation, every life he had tried to ruin. Watching him finally pay for his actions, I felt a surge of satisfaction, not just for me, but for her, for all the fear he had tried to inflict. She recovered fully, and as we left the hospital together, I realized something profound. Survival wasn't enough. Justice, karma, and the refusal to be broken, that was true victory. And in that moment, with her safe by my side, I knew we had not just survived, we had won.
The world could be cruel and indifferent, but it also had a way of balancing the scales, and some lessons were learned the hard way.